Hey,
Hello, hello, hello. Get the headphones on. It's your fault, eh?
yeah.
I got caught up with that stupid poem.
Sorry, what?
Can you hear me? Wait a second.
Yep.
Are you having trouble hearing me? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Ah,
So how's it
all right.
going?
It's going all right. I got caught up in that silly poem you mentioned on Twitter,
Yeah,
and I just have an idea for a funny video. So when the inspiration strikes, you got to go for it.
yeah. You make videos too, or?
I mean, I've started to. I started making TikTok last week because of buildspace stuff, right? I'd never done
Mhm.
it before. I didn't know anything about it, but it's essentially like I don't know. It's like making your personalized like vines, like you used to, or gifs if you prefer that pronunciation.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I feel like buildspace really makes you like make a lot of videos, even if you're not like a content creator.
Yeah, yeah.
For
Well,
marketing.
yeah. Generally, I work with words, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so when the first weekend it was like, oh, you got to record a loom and whatever, and I have this old piece of crap computer that could barely run it. And so yeah, this video of me with this I'm at this computer, right? So I have this backlight. You can barely see me on this tiny little bubble on the side of the screen going over this PDF file, being like, hey, I wrote this thing.
Yeah. I mean, people are going to be more concerned with like your product than what your camera looks like.
Yeah, I would think, yeah, that's what you hope for, right? But it does definitely feel like the people who have more polished, more expensive cameras, they it feels like they get a little bit more attention.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like if your product is good, it doesn't really matter. Um,
Yeah,
but getting the first click is really
yeah, yeah.
where
It's
like
that
being
getting that.
attractive, being clean can
Yeah,
really come in.
yeah. It's that the difference between getting someone's attention and keeping it.
Hmm. All right, so how about we start off with introductions first?
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, I guess
so
that wasn't a very good introduction, was
yeah, so
it?
maybe something like your name and
Yeah, my name, my address, my credit card number, these things.
mm, yeah, I'll need the
um,
back three numbers as well.
yeah. Okay, so my name is John Bauer, and I've been joining BuildSpace for my project, which is to write a novel, a story, a book, whatever you want to call it.
Hmm.
It is an exploration of a world I created with words,
Hmm. Yeah.
and
That,
it's the book is out there on Google Doc. It's not really because it's more or less it's one of the first or second drafts, something like that. But it's about 300 pages in the document, and it's a full story, so you can read it and check it out. You can message me for the link, or if you go to my Substack, I think there's links there at johnbauer.substack.com. And yeah, it's this kind of cozy story about celebrating winter holidays, the kind of cold outside, warm inside feeling is what I was going for.
mhm. Yeah, I really like your one liner. And
Oh, yeah.
you know, I had some questions about the book, which we'll get to.
Okay.
But I opened the doc and I was like, holy, this guy's been like 300 pages worth of material.
Yeah.
It's basically a complete book by now.
Yeah.
So really, the first thing that popped into my mind was, have you only been doing this since Nights and Weekends season 3 started, or have you been working on this for a while?
I had well, I had the idea in my head. I had, you have ideas in your head. I had like an outline, a rough idea of what I wanted to.
Hmm.
Um, spent a week writing that out. It was pretty sloppy, and then I spent another week refining it to what we have now.
So pretty much in a couple weeks, you
Yeah,
went from idea to outline to
yeah.
this.
But that's kind of
Wow.
yeah. So my one skill set is writing, so I can better make use of it.
Did your like full-time job involve writing? Like,
Yeah. Well, I'm doing freelance, uh,
okay.
and I've worked in writing and communications and content creation, content management, all this kind of dumb marketing side of things, but always having to do with writing and storytelling is how I think of it.
Hmm. Yeah. And can I ask what your inspiration was for this book?
For this story,
Yeah.
for Besnowed, my inspiration was to capture the emotions behind a lot of the big festivals in different cultures around the world. It
Hmm.
didn't have to be Christmas, but it's very. I'm from the U.S., so that's
Yeah.
like the big inspiration there. But I wanted it to be a little bit more universal, while also playing on these tropes of what a Christmas story is supposed to be. So it's simultaneously familiar and foreign, which I like.
Hmm. Yeah. I really like um, how you kind of interweave a lot of details,
Yeah,
um, but it's like kind of yeah, the characters are in the moment, like
yeah,
traveling
yeah,
at least in the first chapter, right?
yeah.
The characters are traveling, but
Hmm.
as they're traveling, they're kind of like reflecting on the
Yeah.
past 5 years. Um, and I did notice a lot of similarities between, you know, the real world and some of the
Yeah.
uh, beliefs they have in their world.
Yeah.
But I think you did a really good job with the setting.
Hmm.
So establishing Veranum,
Yeah.
like basically a walled garden kind of
Yeah.
city, um, where everything is maintained, and outside the city is like cold winter, like an hour to like get dressed is
Yeah.
normal, like you know. So I really commend you on that because
Yeah.
it's not easy to kind of do that stuff. The one thing is, how do you pronounce everybody's names or the city names? Because
uh,
reading a book,
yeah.
I can just say whatever, but
Yeah.
reading aloud, I'm like, oh crap, I don't really know how to pronounce these in like
Yeah.
the intended way.
Well, I don't think it doesn't matter, right? I might have a pronunciation in my head, but whatever the reader comes up with, I think is just as valid because these things don't actually exist.
Hmm.
Uh, but a lot of the names they're based, I like to find very esoteric things to make names from. And after I have that research done or some specific word in some specific language, I then try my best to forget it so that it can become its own name for me. In the same way that our names that we use are uh, derived, they have an etymology, right? Whether it's
Hmm.
Kevin or John uh, comes from originally Hebrew. It means something, it has something to do with Yahweh and it's something about God is great, something like that. But when you say John, you don't think about that.
Yeah.
Nor do you think about how John has so many different pronunciations. And so I think the pronunciation of the name is less important than the person. And that's kind of my point in making them not only strange, but it's okay if you pronounce it differently than I do or someone else does.
Hmm.
But to answer your question more specifically, I listened to your reading, and things like you said, Sweefin, but in my head I've been saying Swefin, uh, who is the protagonist of the story.
Hmm.
And then for the other names, it was pretty much what I have in my head. Like I say Verenim. The name of the small village is in my head Besnowed.
Hmm.
Um, the other names I think is not much, especially in the first chapter. There weren't a lot of other kind of questionable pronunciations,
Yeah.
at least in my memory.
Yeah. It was like Lumi, Ren,
Yeah,
and the boy, the girl.
Renzori. Yeah,
Yeah. 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 Zoe.
which is a very obscure reference that if you look up Renzori, you'll immediately understand.
Oh. Uh, what is that? Is that like?
It's a big mountain because it's
Zoe?
playing on the theme of how mountains are sacred in their world.
Oh, that's cool. It's in Africa.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Nice. Nice Easter eggs. I. So is the book designed to be like? Did you plan it to be a certain genre? Like, would you call it a fantasy or like science fiction?
No, I would call it like if anything it's like a Christmas story, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and it's a Christmas story, so it has these elements of a family story, how they celebrate the holiday, and then there's also the love story. And I wanted it to be those warm things, somewhere between, I guess you'd call it a family saga and a love story, where you have the love stories kind of told through the nostalgic flashbacks, and then the family saga is, learning about the generations of the family and how they lived there.
Hmm.
I wanted it to be strange but familiar, like I said, uh, without having to be, some kind of obvious, like fantastical evil wizard or something. I wanted it to
Yeah.
be grounded but off.
So that's kind of interesting that you say that
Yeah,
because, most people when they learn how to write stories, they're like,
yeah,
oh, this is the line of how a story goes, right?
yeah,
You have an introduction of the characters, and then you
yeah,
introduce a conflict, and then they
yeah,
resolve that conflict.
yeah,
And a lot of movies or like current stories today, they're like superheroes versus, even villains, right?
yeah, yeah. You have like the monomyth Joseph Campbell kind of thing, which is
Yeah.
controversial in those circles, but I know what you mean. And I mean, this generally follows that kind of a three-act uh,
Mm.
structure, but I wanted it to be more importantly to capture the feeling of a holiday story.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've done other stories where it has a more traditional arc where you have a bad guy that you have to overcome,
Mm-hmm.
and I wanted to try something different.
Yeah. So how often have you written in the past? Like,
This is my third like full-length novel. This is actually the shortest of the three that I've completed. It's the first one that I've really been going public about, so that's been a fun thing. I've actually spent years now sending out query letters, which are essentially pitches that you send to literary agents and getting
mm-hmm.
rejection after rejection after rejection. So when I had a friend of mine who's more involved in tech send me this buildspace or the nights and weekends link, and was
Mm-hmm.
like, "Why don't you try this?" And I was like, "I know nothing about tech." And
Yeah.
then, but I signed up and ended up getting in. So I, thought, why not just go for it and be public about it this time?
Mm-hmm. And how are you finding that? Are you getting a lot of responses? Are you seeing more
I mean, I'm getting
engagement?
some responses, but uh, it's been interesting just having to be public about it because my whole thing was I wanted to wait until I could do the traditional path because a lot of the times in the traditional publishing world, if you like if you self-publish or do something like that, then unless you sell like 10,000 copies, no agent's ever going to look at your
Mm.
story.
Yeah.
But I've already tried and failed, so why not just do that?
Yeah. Build in public.
Yeah,
That's it's kind of interesting. It's, it's pretty interesting in terms of like, most writers they want like a finished product that's
yeah,
perfect,
yeah. That's a big thing too.
um, and they don't want anyone to know about it.
Yeah,
So one of my favorite authors is Patrick Rothfuss.
mm,
He wrote like he's writing this fantasy series, and it's supposed to be a trilogy, but
yeah,
he released the first two books already, and he's been working on this third book for like 8 years, 7 years by now,
yeah,
and people don't know anything about it,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
yeah, so it feels like there's always an air of like secrecy around these like
yeah.
projects.
Because once you get out, it's one of those things. I know what it feels like because I mean, people are gonna find mistakes. They're gonna find plot holes. They're gonna find typos. They're gonna be like, why didn't you do this thing or that thing? And you're like, yeah, okay. I guess I should have, kept it to myself a little longer. I understand that completely.
Hmm.
Uh, but I don't know. I wanted to try being open about it. Be like, here it is. I have a finished thing. It's not perfect, but it's out there.
Yeah, I mean that it's kind of similar because I think the main reason that people do that is because they don't want to be spoiled, right? Like if
Oh yeah, there's that too. Yeah,
yeah, like I know like people are expecting like a completely finished, polished thing at the end
yeah,
where, every plot hole is closed, every question they had is addressed,
yeah,
and to get to that point without like a lot of eyes on it, it's really hard to do because you as the author have a
mm,
really different perspective on your writing than other people
yeah.
are.
And there's always things that happen when you have people who read your story, your content, whatever you want to call it. uh, where they'll see things from perspectives or take something away from specific wordings that you never intended.
Mm.
And there's those kind of questions about authorial intent and is that even important, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a different discussion that you could talk about that for 8 hours, not have a conclusion. Where I
Right.
think it is interesting, though, in a more broader kind of applicable way, is similar to what you're talking about, but in the reverse. And like, how do you handle then critiques, criticism, comments, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how I tend to think about it is I kind of split it up into four quadrants. I can give you an MS Paint drawing if you want later. But I saw you had a very good MS Paint that kind of went viral, right?
Oh yeah.
That was good. The like weeks, right? Losing motivation and then gaining motivation at the end, like
Mm-hmm.
everyone does. Like a race, like a deadline. Any deadlines like that. You give up. You're like, oh, I got more time. Oh, I don't know if I want to do it. And then you only have 6 hours. You're like, oh, time to write the rest. Yeah, but anyway, so when people comment or critique something you've written or something you've created in general, whether it's a podcast, an app, a book, or a song, anything, I tend to look at it like this, where you have either the whether or not you intended the meaning or what they got out of it, and then whether it's good or bad, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if they say something is good and it's something you intended, okay, you successfully transmitted the message you wanted or did the thing that you wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
If you have they said something is good that you did not intend, that's still good, but you should probably figure out like what's going on. If you have something that they say is bad and it was something you intended to do, then I find that to be a mismatch of audience or it's a mismatch of expectations, not necessarily something you should change. When it's bad is when you have something that you didn't intend that people say is bad.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have something that you messed up that people are misinterpreting.
Mm-hmm. So, do you think publishers should, you know, take a chance on people that are like posting publicly and getting feedback from, you know,
Yeah.
a wide range?
Um, I mean, I think, of course, I do. That's because I'm that guy. So, more broadly speaking, it's you have to change the way you think, right? Because for a publisher, it's a business. It's
Mm-hmm.
about sales, and so they want a sure thing. They don't want to bet on the questionable horse. They want to be able to see that you have a product that will sell and has a guaranteed minimum that they're sure to make back a certain percentage of what they invest in on
Mm-hmm.
it. It has nothing to do with the passion or the
Yeah.
the drive or how inspiring your creation was. It could be tangentially related to that. While you build in public, you semi become an influencer, and then they see you as a marketing asset that could be a good investment, right? That's the
Mm-hmm.
cold way that they tend to look at it because they're it's a business, right? And they take advantage of the fact that people see it as a passion. That's an old story, right? You see it in games and movies and every kind of entertainment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I imagine you see it in the tech world too, but I don't have as much a window into that.
It's I just see some parallels with like
Yeah,
game design actually,
yeah,
because games kind of have a story within them,
yeah,
and I played like Undertale and Deltarune,
yeah,
if you're familiar, and those games kind of have like their own plot
yeah,
in a way, and it's like largely based on the decisions you make. But at the end, what ending you get will be dependent on, the choices you made. And,
yeah,
people don't want to be spoiled, but they do
yeah,
want to play like early demos of the game or like early versions,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
even
You
if they
also,
know like it's going to be different in the future.
yeah,
Um, and I just feel like that kind of mentality just isn't there for books.
yeah. Like you have to read, right? That's part of that's a big hurdle.
Yeah, I know, but like even people who like to read,
Yeah,
they would rather like go for an established kind of
yeah,
series or an established author, over someone like who's just starting out and like
yeah, yeah.
had like a first draft.
But I mean, I guess it is. It's with a thing like a game, well, you have two different things there too. Because the examples you're citing is more on the indie side of things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you have a similar kind of thing. Indie publishers will take more chances than the big AAA players in the publishing world or in the gaming world. It's
Mm-hmm.
the same thing, where an indie dev is much more. It's going to be much more open to the idea of developing in public and sending out tons of updates on Twitter about, oh look, we just did this new thing, we're building this new thing. Hey, come check out the latest demo. A AAA dev, like Square Enix isn't going to be like, hey, we just reached the latest demo for Final Fantasy 16 is here. You gotta check it right now. I mean, they might give you that, but it's very controlled and very much a PR move.
Yeah.
Not about being open. It's about a marketing strategy.
I mean, honestly, with gaming going this route in the industry, like I prefer indie games. Like right
Yep.
now, all the triple A games are like overhyped and like,
Yep.
pre-access early sales and stuff
Yeah.
like that is basically they're releasing half a game for full
Yeah.
price.
Well,
Um,
I mean, I used to work in gaming, but mobile gaming. And the real future of gaming is in
mhm.
mobile gaming because that's where all the money is.
Yeah, I still can't wrap my head around like how much money the mobile games
Yeah.
industry actually is because I feel like no one like when people say gaming, they don't mean like mobile gaming. They mean console or PC.
It depends on your audience.
Yeah.
I imagine people who play, console games or they play computer games, they're going to think of those kind of things. But to advertisers, when you say gaming, it's more and more mobile gaming.
Yeah. Cuz
Or if you need to the industry in general, right? Because even every AAA dev now has a mobile branch because that's the one that actually makes money.
mhm.
It's a big problem in that industry. I guess it's related somewhat to like a book, right?
Yeah.
Where you can spend 7 years on developing a game and then it flops. Uh-oh. Where if you spend 6 months on a mobile game and it flops, no one really cares.
Yeah. Just another one in the pile.
Yeah.
Yeah,
uh,
that's interesting. Um,
yeah. It's also the difference I think between like if you want to draw another parallel between games, or maybe it's applicable to software in general, software dev, where if it's this huge piece of software or a huge game, you have an entire company. You have maybe hundreds of people working on this thing. That's hundreds of jobs.
mhm.
If you have an established author working on his new book that's taken like 8 years, like you said, that's one person. Maybe his his team, but it's not hundreds of people.
Yeah. I think it's also about kind of updates because
Oh yeah,
books are traditionally not updated unless they're textbooks, and then even then it's like
yeah. Oh, I mean,
editions.
I would argue, yeah, you have editions, right? You have
Yeah,
first edition, second edition. Those are like updates. It's not like what you think. You're not pushing like a what do you call it? Like pushing a like what is it? Git kind of thing. Yeah.
yeah, a new version of the game released. Version 1.2 or
Yeah.
1.3. Um, like
Would you like that though? Is that what you're saying?
I I'm just drawing that contrast between them.
Okay.
But it would be interesting because if you play an online game, everybody
Yeah.
has to be on the same version for the right, stats and balance changes.
Yeah.
Um, but when you're reading a book,
Yeah.
you don't really have to say, "Oh, I'm reading, the first edition of a book or
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
second edition."
Unless it's like a highly academic situation when you're citing your sources.
Yeah, or
That's
it's like
very
the Bible.
different. Yeah. I guess, yeah.
Yeah,
uh,
you know.
but I mean, I don't know. Do you think that's a good or a bad thing? I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. It's just different.
Yeah, I don't think it's a bad thing. It's it is just different, but it also makes it kind of more difficult to write a book than
Okay.
to
I would say what you're talking about, I did notice in the way that like other people on buildspace can be like, "Here's my latest update," and I'm like, "Well, here's my book," waiting for people to read it.
yeah, it's like you know your job after writing is literally just marketing it because
Yeah.
you can't make any changes or
Yeah.
you
I mean,
can
you
make
can.
small,
Yeah.
but like
That's
you
what I'm
can't
having my dad
change
proofread it right now.
you can't change like the characters' names or like
Yeah.
um
I mean, even you can. It's not. it's not really, it's not the same. It's not like an update, right? Not like an update where you can be like, I added a new feature. You don't have that.
Yeah.
Or you could be like, maybe like, I added a new chapter to clarify whatever section. You could do things like that, but it's still different.
So,
But something like that would be indicative of significant engagement.
mhm. So, what were your expectations coming into buildspace? Because,
None. I
okay,
had no
none.
idea. I expected it to be like tech bro, hype up everything, bullshit thing. Like, and there's a little bit of that, to be fair.
Hmm.
But
Yeah, definitely.
but I did quickly notice how even if there's some kind of this alien world to me, it was very inclusive. I was very much open to welcoming those from other domains, other kind of thing.
Hmm.
Like you having me on your show, and just everyone else uh, willing to talk and explore all these kind of different ideas people are doing.
Hmm.
And yeah, so I had zero expectations, but I didn't, I thought, if I'm gonna start it, I'm gonna go all the way.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a
Because
good mindset. Um,
yeah,
Honestly, for me, I joined Buildspace back when it was still doing like Web3
yeah,
tutorials and projects. Um, and last season, I actually was, actually trying to develop an app of my own.
yeah.
Yeah. And
How'd that go? It
not
sounds like from the laugh, not good. Yeah,
not great.
yeah,
Because as you said, there's so many like talented developers in
yeah,
Buildspace. Um, and I just felt like I was always behind because
yeah,
I'm not like that great at like full stack web development. Like I
yeah,
could do the front end, but I got stuck really badly on the back end,
yeah,
and it's not really that kind of support of like, oh, I'll let's hop on a call, I'll help you out.
yeah,
That
yeah,
you
yeah,
can expect at like a company or a traditional like
yeah. But that did
mentoring.
surprise me a little too. I thought there'd be more kind of support, but I'm
Mm,
okay. I understand the idea is that you have to. It's about building motivation, and it has done that
yeah.
more so than just being like taking a class and the teacher's going to help you along.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, I mean, I didn't
Which,
expect individual help, but it was
yeah,
like, kind of like I was in an ocean of people and I was
yeah,
like pinging on Twitter, like, anyone know backend
yeah.
solutions? And someone's like, people are just like, oh, use XYZ, right? Like,
Oh
use
yeah.
Superbase, use Vercel. And then I'm like, I have no idea what this is. I'm
But
just
you got to
gonna
use
click on it.
the old Linux solution, right? Where you you don't ask for a solution, you do the wrong thing and be like, hey, how does this look? And then people will tell you very detailed answers.
Ah, yes, the post wrong information on
Yeah,
social media on purpose, so people
yeah.
will correct you.
I mean, yeah, that's an old trick that goes back
Yeah,
as long as I'm sure people have been posting on the internet.
I feel like that only works if you already have like people following you. Otherwise, people
Yeah.
will just like look at it and they'll like scroll past it without interacting.
I imagine on Twitter you'd probably find it. You'd have to go into the archives, put on your Indiana Jones hat, and open up the forums.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then you're doing this kind of podcast video thing now, interview show,
Hmm.
which is it's an interesting move. It's very, I mean, I think it's cool. I used to do podcasts, so I think it's cool.
Yeah. I mean, I've tried like I've tried imagining a podcast, but
Yeah,
my voice isn't really the best for podcasting because I'm very monotonous and
Uh,
yeah, I just feel like um a video format would be a little bit more interesting because at least then I can like edit stuff and
yeah, yeah, yeah. You
um
can edit audio too. I promise
I know, but
you.
that's like so much harder than video.
Yeah, you
Like
think so? I think
I don't know what I'm doing with all those
yeah.
like weird numbers and like
Oh, no.
yeah.
I edit because I would edit a lot of podcasts, and it's amazing how you can make people sound a lot smarter than they are.
Yeah, if you watch my oh yeah, I think you did you watch my interview with Guido Champ, he's actually
Yeah, yeah,
making AI podcasts, and
yeah, yeah, yeah.
those podcasts sound like 10 times better than me. Um,
You think so? But I mean, yeah, whatever.
I think in terms of like engaging voice and stuff, those sound like more traditional, like kind of
Oh, you
news
mean like the TV, like,
broadcasty.
welcome to the 6 o'clock news. We're going to tell you about
Yeah,
blah, blah,
yeah.
blah."
Like I'm not going to do that.
Yeah,
And yeah, so this time around, I was like, okay, I didn't really get feedback last time.
yeah,
I didn't really get the support I needed.
mm-hmm.
Um, and I feel like build space, other than motivation, because motivation dies pretty quick,
Oh
right?
yeah,
Like if you saw my graph, that's basically like energy is equivalent to motivation in that graph because
yeah,
there's that first spike when you get your first 10 viewers, readers,
yeah,
subscribers, whatever, and then after that, if you see engagement go down, your mood also goes down with it.
yeah,
Um, and it's tough because the world is big, people don't have that much time, and you
yeah,
can't expect um, unless you're like a genius, right? You can't really expect people to care that much about you or your
yeah,
work.
yeah,
Uh, but I feel like it's this build space season. I feel like it's been more important for me to find like a support network, if you know what I mean.
yeah,
So
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah,
find people that will be supportive of you,
yep,
no matter what area you're pursuing, so that even if you give up on the project you're currently working on, they'll still be in your circle for your next project
yeah,
or
yeah,
further down the line. If besnowed doesn't work out, your next book might,
yeah. Yeah.
or
Let's
the
hope.
book after that,
Or
because
the other ones I haven't made public, right?
yeah, because it's like 6 weeks is not a long time.
Yeah, yeah. That's
um,
I've talked to some other people who feel the same kind of way where they're like, it's cool meeting all these people, but it's kind of like this is the pace is a little bit faster than
mhm,
it's useful to really get something going. But I think that's part of the whole. I called it like that Silicon Valley-ish startup
mhm,
feeling where that's the idea, right? That you're getting a taste of that, and it's trying to hype everyone up to know that they could be included in that.
mhm, yeah,
Uh, but it's also not for everyone, and that's perfectly fine, I think.
yeah. I
Even
I think it should be for everyone. Like people should at least try it.
yeah,
And
at least
I
nothing to lose, right?
yeah. I think it's just like um it's kind of like what sort of environment you
Yeah,
kind of want, because my background, I'm coming from like a pretty good high school, you know 4 to 5 year university. It's been pretty competitive. Like
yeah,
you feel like you're always competing against other people,
yeah,
whether it's the other students or like for scholarships and stuff like
yeah,
that. um, and I feel like build space is trying to be more collaborative in a
yeah,
sense where there's like a Discord community, and you're giving feedback on other people, but in reality, products or similar products are actually competing with each other,
yeah,
right? Like,
yeah,
I've seen so many like this round. I've seen so many like AI,
yeah,
summarizers, meeting summarizers,
yeah,
audio summarizers, PDF summarizers,
yeah.
um, and
Who has time to read anymore? We need summaries of the summaries.
yeah, honestly, like I'm kind of worried, man, because people's attention spans are going way down, and
Yeah,
it's like, oh, make them 1 minute videos, and then I'm like,
yeah,
but I'm making an hour long video.
yeah.
um,
But that was just before coming on this call. I was making a TikTok for that chaos poem,
yeah,
which was yeah, that turned out to be a whole hassle and a half. But it was fun. For a minute of video, I spent way too long.
yeah. It's like the amount of work that goes into like a short video is a lot.
Well, it's also
Um,
using the stupid TikTok video editors where you can't put precise times on your thumbs. It moves like 0.5 seconds from one direction and then the other. And
yeah, I still haven't got made a TikTok.
yeah, it
I'm
was. I hadn't until last week. So
yeah, I'm just you know I don't know why I feel so bad about it. I think it's just because of the general consensus or
yeah,
like the
I mean, just
stigma.
good. What my mindset is just make the memes that would make you laugh,
Hmm.
and then
Yeah,
do that, or like
but I mean,
the
Pfizer wants us to use it as like a marketing platform. So
because that's where the cool people are now. That's
yeah.
that's where because I don't know if you remember this, but like 10 years ago, uh, Reddit used to always say like they were proud of how they would always be the first one to have memes, but they actually sold
Hmm.
them for 4chan. But how things go.
Yeah.
But it was actually one of those like first places to get things and be like at the top, so everyone started going to Reddit because, um, well, maybe it wasn't the actual first; it was the first place where you could talk about actually seeing it.
Hmm.
And so everyone wanted to have their things on Reddit as soon as possible to be able to, just because that's where the cool place was. And right now, that's TikTok,
Yeah.
right? Where if you have a cool meme, it's going to first be on TikTok, and then it'll go to Facebook Reels or
It'll
kind of
go
thing.
to
So you have
Reddit.
like, they're like two
Yeah.
weeks later, and it's and that's when you show your boomer energy.
I'm too young to be a boomer, but
Oh yeah,
I feel too
you
old to
think
be on
that?
TikTok.
Yeah, I think feeling like you're too old to be on TikTok makes you a boomer. Oh, what a shame.
Yeah, well, I don't want to eat Tide Pods for fun or clout or whatever it is these days.
Oh yeah, I think that was so old. That was like 7 years ago now,
That was 7 years ago.
something like that.
Oh,
The
oh.
Tide Pod channel. Yeah, that was like 7 years ago. I think it was 16, 17, right?
Yeah, you can say 2010 is what 13 years ago. It
Oh
doesn't
yeah,
feel that
things
way.
like that. Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, the way you make people, the way you can like rationalize age into perspective is always fun. Where like you say half your lifetime was however long ago regarding to now,
Hmm.
and you have fun. I mean, it's kind of depressing when you put your own lifespan in perspective. It's more fun when you do things uh, like when Caesar visited uh, the pyramids to him were older than he is to us now. Yeah,
Hmm. Yeah, it's better to make large scale
yeah,
comparisons.
yeah. You have the large scale ones like the T Rex is closer to humans than it is to Stegosaurus.
Yeah. Some people
Weird.
think humans existed at the same time as dinosaurs.
Yeah, some people think a lot of things, don't
Yeah. All right. So I've only read the first chapter of besnowed.
they? Okay.
Um,
Yeah. So what did you think more generally? Were there things you didn't like? I mean, I know you don't have to butter me up. I've been beaten down and worn down by criticism. You don't have to worry.
yeah. Um, I really like the amount of detail you put into it.
Okay.
Um, but I feel like nothing really happens.
Yeah.
So like at the beginning, it's like you start off with like it's been 5 years
Yeah. Yeah.
since going to the village, and then
Yeah.
the ending is just him falling asleep
Yeah.
on the way to the village.
Yeah.
And the first chapter was um, I think around 13 pages.
Yeah. It's
Um,
about 14, 15, I think. Yeah.
yeah, I think it like ends on page 15, but
Yeah.
the title page I don't really count because it just says
Oh yeah.
Beast
I
Node.
forget. So.
um, but yeah, I felt like it was really interesting to get to know the setting and stuff
Okay.
like that.
Yeah.
Um, but as I was reading it, there were like some sentences
Yeah.
that just felt a little bit too long or like
Okay.
kind of weird. Like you can kind of hear me read and I
Yeah.
expect the sentence to stop there and then I'm like, "Oh, but there's more words
Yeah.
before
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
period." And then I have to like say that and
Yeah.
then um but that just might be me reading aloud.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
um
I mean those are intentional things, so I'm okay with it.
mhm.
So I was part of a um making because the narrator is clearly Sleffen,
Yeah.
and that's part of his rambling personality.
hmm it's actually been a while since I read like a narrative style
Yeah.
kind of book. Um,
'Cause I did go back and forth. There was early thoughts where I was like, I'll have like a disembodied narrator who speaks properly and is always like clear and concise, but it's more fun to make it in his voice.
yeah. Um, have you
Yeah,
thought about like, you know, any future prospects of this? Like, could you adapt it into like a short film per se?
that kind of thing. I mean, I could. Yeah, who's going to give me the money and provide the reason? I will say, like, I mean, the more, yeah, if you give me the money, I'd love to do that kind of thing. That kind of thing.
Well, how much money
Or
would
if you
it
mean
need?
like, yeah, how much are you willing to give? That's. I think what's more interesting to me is to kind of develop my other stories if I could, or to make my other stories public. Because this one, the idea for this story actually is kind of a spin-off or connected to one of my other stories that I haven't
Mm,
been public with at all. Which there's some slight references to it in this one too, but I mean you'd never know unless you're in my head or you're one of the few people who have read it.
hmm
Uh, and I think it'd be really cool to after I make this one out there and like release it on something because I doubt any agent's going to pick it up before demo day, but I want it to be available for people, so I'm probably just going to make it available on Amazon or something.
hmm
But I have to get my dad to finish proofreading first. um, but yeah, I would like to maybe do a similar process in a short amount of time span to get the other project out there,
hmm
which is that was also meant to be a series, and I didn't want to start working on the whole series unless I actually got it picked up. But that never happened. So,
hmm
but
Yeah. So is your dad kind of like your editor or your supporter or something?
he's one of them. He's one of them, but he's a very educated man. So he's I trust him to see the mistakes I don't. Because I'm very much I don't know. I'm much more a forest than the trees kind of guy. So
Mm,
and I have like weird eye problems, so I don't always like looking at letters individually.
yeah.
And I also that's kind of when I start writing, I start in like Notepad, right?
hmm
Because
Kind of
I don't like writing
scribble.
in Word or anything, yeah, with the little lines and all that kind of stuff. So I just kind of write and get it out, and then you start working on fixing any errors. When
hmm
you do it that way, you inevitably have things that you miss.
Yeah.
So it's good to have a set of eyes and the kind of eyes that are really good at finding those mistakes, finding the trees.
Mm. In terms of publishers you reached out to,
Yeah,
have they all been like big companies or like independent publishers?
I've
Um,
reached out to quite a few. I think so. A part of the issue is I'm based in Paris, France.
oh.
So so I think for most publishing in English, you should either be based in LA, New York, or London, and I'm none of those. Uh,
hmm
so making these kind of cold pitches as an amateur author to any publisher is kind of weird. For indie publishers, they would more prioritize local authors.
hmm
Big publishers, I'm no name from nowhere.
hmm
So I mean, I understand that, but it's still sad.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, I still try too, right?
Yeah.
You never
Absolutely.
know.
Yeah. Because I was just thinking about it like kind of like college applications. Like
Yeah.
there are probably like a few big publishers that, everybody is sending them to.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But
Um,
generally, you try to find an agent at a publisher who's accepting queries, is what they call them,
hmm,
and then you see if it's a match, and you change your query a little bit, like your cover letter, and you have relevant information about the story, and they'll usually have specific information they want as well. You send it off, and then if you hear nothing back, you can like send a reminder. Most of the time, you just either hear nothing or they like get back to you 6 weeks or 6 months later,
hmm,
saying, we're sorry. It's a subjective business, and it doesn't seem to be a match. Please keep trying, though, because there's sure to be someone out there who could enjoy your story.
yeah. I mean, I wonder if there's like bug bounties for writers. Kind of like a
Oh, for like
publisher
finding
saying,
typos.
no, like publishers saying, "Hey, we haven't had a really good sci-fi book in a while. Like we
Oh,
published like nonfiction books, we publish, you know,
yeah, you'll get
teen."
that. But
Um,
it's, I imagine in the tech world, it's a lot more. There's like a single platform where they talk about that stuff.
hmm,
It's much more. I don't know. That's I'm gonna say the wrong word, but you'll understand. It's like arpeggiated. Right? There's not really a standard.
yeah. Eh,
There are some places, like some people will talk about it on Twitter. There's Query Tracker. There's your like a wish list thing. I forget what it's called. There's a bunch of different things. It'll be different if you're in the U.S., in the U.K., in Canada, Australia, or in France.
mhm.
Um, but that's also traditional publishing. The big thing with traditional publishing is that pretty much across the board, if you self-publish, they won't look at your book.
Yeah. I think there are actually some Reddit subreddits that are about like kind of writing or like
Yeah, there
um,
are.
prompting.
Yeah,
And, when I went there to check those out,
yeah,
I see a lot of comments saying, your writing is so great, like you should write a book and
yeah.
I'll support you. Um,
You
and
do get
I
that.
do wonder like how many of those people actually, write a full book.
Yeah,
Um,
probably very few. Probably even few. I imagine very few of the people who said they would support them actually do support them too.
yeah. Because it's very easy to, write out that comment in the moment.
Yeah,
Um,
I imagine too. They kind of the writing prompt stories are usually, it's quirky one-off kind of content things. I tried this thing. I tried doing a thing where I would. This was maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, where I wanted to like force people to be interested in my writing. And I saw that this is when I first learned that you can make AI art.
mhm.
And I had some friends who were having kids, right? So I was like, I'm gonna write them a children's book for their kid, and then generate the art using AI because you need AI art. You need art for like children's book.
Hmm.
And so I had these, surreal nightmares accompanying the cute text there.
Yeah. I
uh,
think someone else is actually making like educational children's books using
yeah, I do
AI
remember seeing
generated
that,
art.
but I haven't seen them beyond. I remember seeing that like the first or second week, but then I haven't been able to find them since.
Oh, if you're interested, I know what they're called, so
Oh
I
yeah,
can
send it
DM
to me.
that. Yeah. Um. Oh yeah, I can't believe I didn't ask you this yet.
Yep.
What's your favorite book slash series?
My favorite book slash series. You want to say my biggest influence or my favorite?
You can say both. You
Okay.
know.
My biggest influence as a writer uh, is not really an author. It's more, if you know who MF Doom is, he's a
I mean,
rapper. Yeah.
I
Uh,
was not expecting that.
yeah, MF Doom, and if you know this guy named Reggie Watts, he's a comedian slash musician rapper kind of guy. And I really like what they do because they play around with intention, but the the sonic aspect of uh, intention, where if what you're saying sounds like it should mean something, people will believe it does. So, and I love playing around with the sound of words to make people feel like things mean something, but maybe then it also feels like nonsense. But then they think a little bit more, and it actually means more.
Hmm.
So yeah, you can see I'm a big fan of the surreal stuff too. So like if it's Kafka or the Japanese author Murakami.
Mm.
I love I love that kind of stuff. Um, those would definitely be my favorite and my biggest influences. And yeah, if you step into video games, definitely like Final Fantasy. It was one of my favorite kind of story content things.
Yeah. I haven't played Final Fantasy just because, like,
Okay.
I'm kind of scared of how many there are.
Yeah.
Because, like, I don't know. They released, like, what, 15, 16,
Yeah,
17?
but then none of them are connected. They're all like self-contained stories.
Yeah, but my personality is just, like, if I'm gonna, like, watch the latest, like, John Wick 4, if I'm going to watch John Wick 4, I'm gonna have to watch
Oh
1, 2,
yeah,
and
yeah.
3 first.
Well, what
Um,
you can do, what I recommend, especially for the titles, and you actually care about these kind of things, uh, is get them on your phone and play them on your commute if you have a
Mm.
commute.
I didn't know they
And
had like mobile apps for Final Fantasy.
yeah, they do
Yeah.
for I think every game, like up to something crazy like 10.
Yeah. I feel like the mobile app industry is basically just commuters or, children.
Was it's everything,
Yeah.
everyone, uh,
Because it's
because
like
everyone has a
everybody
phone.
has a phone,
That's what
but
everyone
not
says,
everyone
right?
has
Yeah.
like PC or
Now you know how to
consoles.
pitch to advertisers. There's different aspects of it. There's the kind of thing. Well, that's when you're talking about like really hyper casual content. What they're talking about is the kind of when you're on commute, you want to be able to flip it open, turn on your phone, play it for a few stops, turn it off, go to your office, sit down,
Hmm.
and then you maybe, you're on your coffee, your smoke break, you come back about and play for rounds, this kind of thing.
Hmm.
That's one way to look at it, but there's also there's layers to this, right? Um, because that's generally how you would think about it in like the North American and maybe European markets, right?
Hmm.
But then you have like, the rest of the world, where there's a lot of places where they kind of skipped over the PC step of technology, and so they are the kind of natively mobile first, and it's not like this kind of in between thing. It's just their main thing.
Yeah. Um, let's see what time it is. Oh, it's
Oh,
already
wait, I got
10.
another question for you though.
Yeah, sure.
Oh yeah, I see it's the hour, but we started late. We can run late.
Yeah.
Um, are you gonna read more of Besnowed, or how could I convince you to read more?
Um, I probably will read more. I don't know if I'm going to record it
Yeah.
aloud. 'Cause
Well, I'm already doing that, so you don't need to bother me.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's more for me. Like
Okay.
I want to like get practice
Yeah.
speaking. Um, 'Cause pretty much everything is about practice, and I've been
Yeah.
a pretty quiet kind of
Yeah.
kid. Um, but recently I've been feeling more comfortable being on camera.
Yep.
Or I force myself to. um,
That's a part of it, right?
yeah. Um, but like I can feel myself getting a little bit better every single time I release
Yep.
something new.
That's good.
Um, but yeah.
Okay. So I'll hold you to that. You're at least, and the next chapter is much shorter, so you don't have to be
Okay.
afraid. The first chapter is pretty long, and then there's a few shorter ones. It's kind of, and you'll understand, um, because a part of that first chapter being a little slow is exactly for setting the pace of this is not going to be, this kind of exciting adventure. It's about exploring the holiday.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I want the reader to be okay with that early.
Yeah. I mean, if
Okay.
you read through the first chapter, you're definitely a reader. Like
Yeah.
you have to have some sort of attention span to sit down for
Yeah.
like 20 minutes and
Yeah.
read through that.
Okay. Well, I'll hold you to that, and let me know definitely what you think going forward. Because yeah, I mean, I that's one of the things I need is more people
Yeah,
telling me
I'll give
how
you
much I suck
feedback.
and how much I don't suck, right? In equal and opposite measures.
Hmm. Yeah.
All right. Well, if you think it's time up, we can stop talking. I'll send you my MS Paint drawing of the different quadrants for how I take critiques and criticisms.
Sure. I'll post that on my Twitter as well.
All
Credit
right.
to you.
All right.
Alright.
Sounds
It,
good.
it was
And then
great to meet you.
nice meeting you too.
Yeah. Alright.
All right.
See you.
I don't know if who's gonna hang up. Bye.
Alright. See you, John.